Hey, welcome back to watch Novice try out Advent of Code. We're going to continue right along, doing this in R. I'm going to try to show my work, show my steps this time. Usual introductions on the left side of the screen, and I'm going to start reading off the prompt on the right side of the screen. Day 5, Hydrothermal Venture. You come across a field of hydrothermal vents on the ocean floor. These vents constantly produce large, opaque clouds, so it would be best to avoid them if possible. Remember that we're in a submarine, of course. They tend to form in lines. The submarine helpfully produces a list of nearby lines of vents, that will be your puzzle input, for you to review. For example, and we have these coordinates. Each line of vents is given the line segment in the format x1, y1 to x2, y2, where x1, y1 are the coordinates of one end of the line segment and x2, y2 are the coordinates of the other end. These line segments include the points at both ends. In other words, an entry like 1, 1 to 1, 3 covers points 1, 1, 1, 2, and 1, 3. Notice that we're using integer values. An entry like 9, 7 to 7, 7 covers points 9, 7, 8, 7, and 7, 7. For now, consider only horizontal or vertical lines. That means that x1 equals x2 or y1 equals y2. Thinking ahead, I have a hunch we're going to have to worry about diagonal lines as well, but there's probably something even harder for part 2. So for the horizontal or vertical lines from the example input, we would get this diagram. And summarizing this paragraph here, we're going to add 1 to wherever the line was indicated. And these numbers are going to be the totals. Now, if there's nothing there, we have a dot, but I think I'm going to use the number 0. Should be fine for now. To avoid the most dangerous areas, you need to determine the number of points where at least 2 lines overlap. In the above example, this is anywhere in the diagram with a 2 or larger, a total of 5 locations. So in the example, we have this, and these 3 are the 5 locations we're looking for. And I'm going to count up those locations. Consider only horizontal and vertical lines. How many points do at least 2 lines overlap? Okay. My usual strategy, I'm going to store the information in text files. So for the example, we have these numbers here. Double checking the white space. And for the input, watch how big these numbers will get. Ooh, we have numbers in triple digits, probably not too bad. So it'll probably be something like 1,000 by 1,000 matrix, which is not too bad for a computer program to handle. So let's go ahead and open up our studio. We are working on day 5. I'm going to be doing some matrix operations. I don't know if I need the tidyverse. And that will be our line of code to bring in the puzzle input. And that will be our line of code to bring in the example. Let me save this, of course. Had a typo on those text files. That would have been annoying. So we have the 10 quote-unquote lines, pun intended, from the example input. And let's see, how do I want to bring in this information now? We have some numbers. And I think what I want to do is, I'm an R programmer, and I have my webcam in the way, don't I? I'm going to make a data frame. I'm going to use the string R package, so might as well bring in a tidyverse after all. Going to find all the numbers in the puzzle input. That's going to return a list, so I do not want that. And I'm pretty sure that none of the numbers were negative, so I think I'll stick with integers. So now our data frame the data frame did get the numbers, but not necessarily in a way I wanted them to be organized. Let me double check something. If I string extract, I'm just going to brute force this. Let's create vectors. For y1, y2, x1, x2. And then we have our numbers getting stored there. just going to be a little careful. X2 was actually the third number in the list. Y1 was the second number in the list. So now our data frame looks like this. And I'm missing something here. So which number am I missing? X1, Y1, X2, and Y2. That is weird. Sorry, we are debugging already. So if we're going after the first row, I is equal to 1. Then the string extract all gets these numbers. If I unlist those, we get those numbers. And if I as integer, we get those numbers. So then, oh, there it is. I had a Y1 duplicated there. Okay. And there's our data frame. So what I want now is to build a relatively large matrix of a size that can handle these numbers. So for example, in this example, the largest number is 9, but because we're counting from 0, we need a 10 by 10 matrix. I wonder if I could just do maximum of the data frame right now. There we go. Yeah. So we're going to have M be our matrix. Going to be one thing I'm going to have to worry about is ours counts from 1 and these numbers count from 0. So I'm going to have to keep adding, I think I'm going to have to keep adding 1 somewhere. So now our matrix will have enough space for us to play with. And then what we're going to do is now go through our rows, and where the lines are horizontal or vertical, where x1 equals x2, we'll do a calculation. When y1 equals y2, we will do a calculation as well. Now, with data frames, we could filter through and remove the rows where those conditions are not met. But for now, in part 1, we might be able to get away with a simple code and just see if it works out. So if x1 in that row is equal to x2 in that row, so this is to look for vertical line, then m from x1 to y1 it's x1 to x2 what I'm concerned about at the moment is, remember, in normal graphing, x is on the horizontal, y is on the vertical. And this has come up in some puzzles. So I'm going to actually put the y values first, since the verticals are the rows. And what we're doing is adding 1 to all those values. So now we'll look for horizontal lines. And that's when the y value is a constant. And if everything works out okay, that's not good. The issue is part of zeros, but I just want to really make sure I understand this. So the first x1 is 0, the second x1 is 0, or 5. The first y1 is 9, the first y2 is 9. So what will happen is that, oh, because I didn't put the bracket i's down here as well. That's what happened. Okay. But as I briefly mentioned above, I'm going to need to add 1 to all these numbers anyways. Because r starts at 1, but the coordinates start at 0. So vertical lines and horizontal lines. This is now C to D, A to B. The warning is coming from the text file. So now, if we look at our results here, we notice that the number 2 appears in 5 different locations. That matches the example. So we could then say count up the number of spots where the value of m is greater than 1 and we have the 5 dangerous locations. So now what I'm going to do is toggle off the example, toggle on the real input. Let this run for a bit. And we got the right answer. So give ourselves a pat on the back. Continuing on to part 2. Unfortunately, considering only the horizontal and vertical lines doesn't give you a full picture. You need to also consider diagonal lines. Figures. Because the limits of the hydrothermal vent mapping system, the lines in your list will only ever be horizontal, vertical, or diagonal. Thank goodness. At exactly 45 degrees. So, for example, 1, 1 to 3, 3 covers the points 1, 1, 2, 3, 3, 3. So now, considering the example, could toggle that. You'll still need to consider the overlap. Okay. So now, I think this is not too bad. Hopefully, I understood all that. So the issue is going to be our conditional. We looked for vertical lines. We looked for horizontal lines. Like so. Otherwise, this will now be a search for diagonal lines. And what I'm building towards is, if the line is diagonal, see this in this example, we're going from 1 to 3 in both the x and y directions. If this line is diagonal, we need to make these sequences 1, 2, 3. These sequences that say increase. Now, fortunately in R, if I go from like 5 to 9 with the colon, that goes 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. If I accidentally go 9 to 5 with the colon, it'll count down 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. And this will be useful, so this way we don't have to check which direction we are going diagonally. So the sequence in the x direction will be a sequence going from A to B. The sequence in the y direction will be a sequence going from C to D. And then we're going to I'm going to be careful here. I don't want to accidentally make a whole square of effects. For the diagonal, the so-called hydrothermal vents only affecting us diagonally, not over the entire rectangle or square. So now, I need to be careful to only do that. And only go after the diagonal coordinates. Okay, so now we're looking at, let me toggle on the example. So I got the 12, but just to show us, I want to make sure I got this matrix here. And I couldn't keep everything on the same screen, but I think we are doing fine. So with that said, now the question is, at how many points do at least two lines overlap? The prompt is still the same. I carefully considered the diagonal lines. I'm going to run this with the original input. And we did this in less than half an hour. Look at that, folks. Well, I wish I had a more clever sign off, but I just want to keep these videos at a reasonable length. Thank you for watching, and hopefully I'll see you tomorrow.